What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast hosted by Joey Mailari. This evening, I'm going to be doing an NHL special with the NHL Draft being tonight. We'll give a mock draft of the top 5 picks and also talk about a funny part of the draft with the potential scenario of current Northeastern star center Jack Hughes being drafted by his father, Kent Hughes, who is the current general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. So to start things off, the NHL Draft is tonight. The first round starting at 7 o'clock. Then rounds 2 through 7 being tomorrow. It is being held in Montreal, and Montreal currently holds the first pick in the draft. As I just said, Canadiens GM Kent Hughes holds the first pick of the draft. He also holds the 26th and 33rd picks. And I think the 26th and the 33rd pick could be the one he uses to potentially select his son in the draft, Jack Hughes. And not that Jack Hughes, not the Jack Hughes from the New Jersey Devils. That center, a different center with the name Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes, the Northeastern University freshman from this past season. He's going into his sophomore year now at Northeastern. So not the Jack Hughes from the Devils, who was the first pick of the 2019 draft. A different Jack Hughes, the Northeastern University Husky Jack Hughes. But a funny thing about this Jack Hughes of Northeastern is that he's the center as well. Very skilled prospect. He's got a great IQ and sets his teammates up very well. One of the biggest plays of Northeastern's season this year was the last regular season game of the year. They needed to win that game in order to win the Hockey East regular season title. He not only wins the faceoff and gets the puck against the board and sets up Aidan McDonough, Northeastern star forward, for the game-winning goal, which ended up giving Northeastern their first Hockey East regular season title in the history of the program. So he not only won the faceoff, but then also got the puck, retrieved it, and set up McDonough for the win, which was such an exciting play for Northeastern. Hughes is a native of Westwood, Massachusetts. He's 18 years old, 5'11", 170. He's not the fastest player, but I think he could definitely develop more speed over time. And I'm sure he'll definitely put on more muscle over the next year or so at Northeastern. If he were to come back, I think he's going to come back. But let's say he were to be, top pick in the draft, top 20 pick. You never know. Maybe he would sign and go to the NHL. But I believe he'll be going back to Northeastern for another year. I think he'll develop a lot more over the next season. He'll get to play with his brother Riley Hughes for one more year. He's going into his senior year now at Northeastern from a 2018 7th-round draft pick of the New York Rangers. One thing about this Northeastern team that's funny is that I often call it, on my BC Sports Radio show, I say the Northeastern Canadiens a lot, and that's because Northeastern has a ton of connections between their hockey program and the Montreal Canadiens. Currently, right now, as I said, the GM of the Montreal Canadiens, Kent Hughes, his son Riley Hughes plays for Northeastern, and his son Jack Hughes plays for Northeastern. Then you look at it, Jordan Harris, former 2018 third-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens, is a defenseman of the Canadiens. Now we played the last year with Jack Hughes and played 3 years with Riley Hughes at Northeastern. Then you look at Jaden Struble, current Northeastern defenseman. He's going into a senior year now at Northeastern. He was drafted by the Canadiens with the 46th overall selection in the second round of the 2019 NHL Draft. So another teammate of Jack and Riley Hughes. And then you look at another connection, Ryan St. Louis, current Northeastern University left winger. He was a freshman teammate of Jack Hughes this past year. He's actually going to be playing in the USHL for this upcoming season. But St. Louis' dad is former NHL legend Martin St. Louis, who is the current head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. So the Canadiens head coach, St. Louis, his son plays at Northeastern. The Canadiens GM, Kent Hughes, he has two sons at Northeastern. And then you got Jordan Harris and Jaden Struble both being former Canadiens draft picks, with Jaden Struble still being a Northeastern Husky, and now Jordan Harris being Montreal Canadian currently. Then you also got Caden Primo, who was the star goalie at Northeastern in 2017 and 2018. He was actually 2017 draft pick of the Canadiens. He's played 18 games now for the Canadiens over the last 3 NHL seasons. He's played the majority of his career now in the AHL for the Canadiens, but 18 NHL games. Then you add up all the other connections Northeastern's had to the Canadiens. It's really cool, though. So that's why I call them the Northeastern Canadiens. Anyways, for Jack Hughes, he was a Hockey East All-Rookie Team selection this past year. 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points in 39 games. He played for the U18 USA National Development Team in 2020 and 2021. He had a very good year for them. 8 goals, 26 assists, 34 points in 38 games. He did very well at the NHL Combine. He was first in left-hand grip strength with 160 pounds, ninth in right-hand grip strength with 145 pounds measured. And then also Northeastern commit incoming freshman Cameron Lund measured fourth in right-hand grip strength with 152 pounds. He's a current projected second-round pick in this year's NHL Draft. To continue with Jack Hughes, he was eighth in standing long jump distance with 111.5 inches. He was seventh in vertical jump, 19.94 inches. And then in the pro agility test, which is the 5-10-5 shuttle, Hughes was third in pro agility going to his left in the shuttle, completing it 4.4 seconds. And then he was sixth in the pro agility right, finishing it in 4.55 seconds going to his right. Lund was actually 10th in the pro agility right with the 4.61 time. Hughes was first, which I think is the most impressive, was first in consecutive pull-ups with 19. Shows he's very strong, has a lot of muscle, a lot of upper body strength. I'm sure he's only going to get stronger over the next year at Northeastern. Hughes played a majority of the second half of the season for Northeastern on the first line. He did play a lot when Justin Ritzkovian was out with an injury, but even when Ritzkovian came back, they still kind of split time in the first line. One thing about Hughes, though, is that he sets up his teammates very well, like that play with McDonough against Merrimack that I was describing at the beginning of this episode. He also plays very good defense as well, and I think over the next year or so, he'll probably put on more muscle and definitely will be able to get stronger and be able to perfect his game more at Northeastern, hopefully for at least one more year, maybe two, who knows. He could go the Jordan Harris route and play all 4 years at Northeastern, just like Aidan McDonough did. Now, Aidan McDonough is going into his fourth year, but like Jordan Harris did and Aidan McDonough is going to do, play all 4 years at Northeastern and then sign with their NHL club. And I think one thing about Hughes is he's only 18 years old, so he has a ton of talent to grow. He was only 17 at the start of this college hockey season, so I think this year will be another year he can progress, take things slow, develop over time, and I think he's only going to get better. And I think this year is going to be a big year for him in Northeastern's hockey program. I'm looking forward to being able to cover it a ton in my podcast here, and then also my podcast when I get back to BC. Anyway, so now I'm going to transition to my 5-pick mock draft. With the first pick is the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to be a surprise to many, probably who I've taken at number 1 right now. But I got Juraj Slafkovsky, 6'4" left winger, 18 years old, from Slovakia. He helped Slovakia win their first Olympic medal this past year, Olympic hockey medal, that is, a bronze medal in the 2022 Olympic Games. I think the most surprising thing and the most impressive thing is that he was the MVP of the Beijing Hockey Olympics at just 17 years old. He only just turned 18 recently. As I said, big frame, 6'4", 218. So he's a big kid. He's a left winger, but can also play center. So I'm not sure what he's going to transition to in the NHL. But he scored. One impressive thing that really got my eye was that he scored in the first period quarterfinals matchup versus Team USA in the Olympics. And that he had 7 goals in 7 games of the Olympic Games at just 17 years old, which was really impressive. So if you watch his stats too and look at it, I mean, it's very impressive. I think if you watch his actual highlight reel, I think that's even more impressive than his stat line in general, since I think a lot of the time box scores don't tell you everything about a player. Obviously, you can see a guy has 30, 40 goals, you're going to know they can light it up. But I think at the end of the day, sometimes you can look at a player's highlight reel and learn more from that than just looking at box scores. One thing about Slafkovsky is that in the IIHF Men's World Championship Tournament this year, he had 3 goals and 6 assists, so 9 points in 8 games. He's a lefty shooter, has exceptional hockey IQ, and in that Men's World Championship, I watched a couple of those games. I really got into it because of Adam Gaudette playing for Team USA, so I only watched maybe 1 or 2 of Slafkovsky's games, but I got into it, as I said, because of Gaudette, so I really was only rooting for Team USA. But one thing about Slafkovsky is that he has unreal hands. His stick handling is exceptional. And I think he'll be a great playmaker and a great scoring machine at the NHL level. It's probably a surprise pick to many, but what made me think he's going to go number 1 is not only because he has such great talent and was obviously the MVP of the Beijing Olympics at 17 years old. That's very impressive. Was that he met with the Canadiens this morning. So that gives me the idea that he'll probably be the first pick of the draft, but who knows? All of the buzz around Shane Wright being the first pick could be real too. And I believe, either way, no matter if they go Wright or Slafkovsky, I think both of them are great players. But my preference would be Slafkovsky just because of how much talent he has, especially in his highlight reels. You never know. I mean, maybe they're just meeting with Slafkovsky just to be using it as a smokescreen against other teams. The Canadiens could be doing that as a tactic. But I personally would take Slafkovsky at number one. That's why I have him going with the first overall pick. But Shane Wright has had the most buzz to be the number one overall pick, and he actually met with Canadiens 6 times over the whole draft process. So they definitely have deep interest in him. So I would not be surprised if he's the first overall selection. So now with the second pick, I have the New Jersey Devils taking Shane Wright, 18-year-old Canadian center. He played for Kingston in the Ontario Hockey League, the OHL, this past year. He was the team captain. He's heavily projected right now to be the first overall pick, so it's probably a surprise to many of him going at 2. But as I said, I like Slafkovsky a little more. But Wright played this year for Kingston, the OHL. He also played in the OHL at just 15 years old. The youngest you're supposed to be is 16, but they let him play a year early. They gave him the exceptional status. They granted the exceptional status right to be able to play at 15 years old, and he absolutely lit it up at 15 years old, playing against 16 through 21-year-olds. He had 39 goals, 27 assists, 66 points at 58 games. So that shows how much talent he has. And then this past year in the OHL, he had 32 goals, 62 assists, 94 total points in 63 games. Also had a plus 23 plus minus rating. So it shows how effective he is when he's out there. He's definitely a difference maker and such a great talent. One interesting thing is that there was not a season in the OHL in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID, but he still competed for Team Canada in the U18 World Championships, and he played a huge role in that team winning the gold medal. He was unreal in that tournament, putting up 14 points in 5 games, 9 goals and 5 assists. And I just saw in a HockeyWriters.com article that he had a better point per game average than Connor McDavid did in his rookie season in the OHL. 1.14 points per game was right to McDavid's 1.05 points per game in his rookie year in the OHL. So very impressive. And another stat line I saw from that article was that he was 6 goals shy of tying John Tavares' record for goals by a rookie in the OHL. So as you can see, a very great player. It's not just goal scoring with him. He's a very good defensive forward as well. He's great release on his shot. A lot of hockey writers compare him to Patrice Bergeron. And being compared to a player like Patrice Bergeron is always a compliment. So it just shows how much talent he has. So I have him going second overall to the New Jersey Devils. Then at third overall, I have the Arizona Coyotes taking Logan Cooley, an American center who played for the United States National Development Team this past year, the U18 team. He's 5'10", 180, 18 years old. He's committed to the University of Minnesota in the U18 division of the U.S. National Team Development Program. He had 27 goals, 48 assists, 75 points in 51 games. That's a 1.47 point per game average, which is very impressive. One thing about him is that he's very great in transition, very good and talented playmaker as well. He's kind of like a jack of all trades. He can really just do it all and help you in any way, shape, or form that you need. He's a great skater and also a great two-way center. For the U18 U.S. national team this year, he had a plus 38 plus minus rating. So that shows how effective he is and how much of a difference maker he is when he's out there. Very effective playmaker scoring-wise, and also, as I said, he can kind of do everything, play defense as well. Definitely one of the most talented players in this class, so I don't see him falling out of the top 5. I'd imagine he's going to be a top 5 pick. And I have him being the first American player taking in this draft. I think he's the best one, especially a lot of hockey writers see him being the best, not only American player in this draft, they see him being a top 5 pick. So I have him going third overall to the Arizona Coyotes. Then at fourth, I have the Seattle Kraken taking Cutter Goudier, an American center / left winger. 6'3", 189 pounds. He's a lefty shooter who played for the U.S. National U18 team this past year. He's a Boston College commit, so hopefully I get to see him play the next year, unless he were to sign with the team that drafts him, but I think that's unlikely. So hopefully I get to see him play at BC this year. It'll be a great year in college hockey, especially with BC having a good amount of great recruits coming in. I've seen him consistently going somewhere in the top 6, top 7, top 8 of most mock drafts. So I have him going 4 right here to the Seattle Kraken. In the last year for the U.S. National U18 team, he had 34 goals, 31 assists, 65 points in 54 games. He brings a ton of speed and is a great goal scorer. I think he'll be a great point scorer at the next level, and I think he'll be a steal at 4 overall to the Seattle Kraken a few years from now, especially if he uses a year or two to develop at BC. He'll only get better playing against teams in the Hockey East, one of the best divisions in college hockey. Now, for my last pick of this mock draft, I have the Philadelphia Flyers taking Matthew Savoie, a Canadian center who just played for the Winnipeg Ice in the Western Hockey League this past year. One thing about him is he's a little undersized. He's 5'9", 179 pounds. He's 18 years old, so still has a lot of time to develop. But I think his size could hurt him. But he plays with so much speed that he kind of makes up for the size. And you see that in his stat line: 35 goals, 55 assists, 90 points in 65 games. He had a plus 54 rating, plus-minus rating this past season for Winnipeg, which is unreal, especially in the WHL. There's a lot of good players there. He did not finish the season, though, with a shoulder injury. He missed the last few games of the year. During the 2020-2021 season, he played for the Dubuque Fighting Saints in the USHL and had 21 goals, 17 assists, 38 goals in 34 games. He's an absolute scoring machine and quite the playmaker out there on the ice, especially in his highlight reels. He plays very fast. And even though he's 5'9", I think he makes up for it with his speed. So I have him going 5 to the Philadelphia Flyers. And now just some news around the NHL today. The Blackhawks traded star right winger Alex DeBrincat to the Ottawa Senators for the number 7 and number 39 overall selections in tonight's draft, and then also a 2024 third-round selection. Chicago's in a full rebuild now, especially with trading DeBrincat. The Chicago Blackhawks now have 7 draft picks in the first 3 rounds of this year's NHL Draft, 10 picks altogether, so clearly a deep rebuild. DeBrincat, former Chicago 2016 second-round pick, had 41 goals, 37 assists, 78 points in 82 games this year. He played all 82 games. Third time in his career he's actually reached that mark in his 5-year career. He's played every game of the regular season, so I guess you could say he's kind of like an Iron Man. Only 5'7", 165 pounds, but he really misses games, which is very impressive, how he always stays out there on the ice and does not get hurt. I just saw in an NBC Chicago website article that he's tied for 8th in all of the NHL with 160 goals since 2017. This year, he actually had a career high in points, 78 points, and was a 2022 NHL All-Star selection. Another thing is that in the shortened 2020-2021 NHL season, he was 3rd in the NHL in goals with 32 goals scored. Also had 24 assists and 56 total points in 52 games played, 52 out of 56 games. So once again, doesn't miss many games, only 4 games in a season. So clearly after this trade, Chicago's in for a deep rebuild. I'm happy to see the Ottawa Senators trying to improve and make a run at it, especially after a tough season they just had. But they still have some pieces to build around. I definitely think DeBrincat makes them a lot better of a team too. So I see it as a good move for both NHL clubs, both going in different directions. One's rebuilding and one's trying to go up and make a run at it and be on the rise. So that's that about NHL news. And then also with the NHL Draft, I just saw the Devils and Coyotes could potentially trade the 2nd and 3rd overall selections in tonight's draft. So my mock draft could completely be wrong, especially if they were to trade those picks. But it definitely should be an interesting draft night. Very excited to see where some of these guys go. Hopefully, Jack Hughes will be drafted tonight. I see him going anywhere between 25 to 35. So hopefully his father takes him. I mean, the Canadiens have the 26th and the 33rd overall picks. So he has 2 chances there in the later parts of the first round and early part of the second round to grab his son, which would be a really funny story. Anyways, that completely wraps up this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. I truly appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I'm looking forward to getting back on here again soon. Thank you.